Welcome to the Baunfire podcast. I am your host, Baun Diesel, and this week we'll be talking about the Xbox Games Showcase, Ubisoft's Forward show, Dragon Age The Veilguard, and much more. Before we get started, subscribe to the Baunfire on your favorite podcast app and leave a review on Spotify or iTunes, or subscribe to the Baun Diesel YouTube channel to get all of my videos, including this podcast. Thank you to everyone who supports as a YouTube member or Twitch subscriber. If you are interested in supporting this podcast and all of my other content, check out the link in the show description. Next gen consoles. So one of the things that's come from all of the showcases this weekend is a little bit of chatter, the kind of beginnings of that whole what's coming next conversation. And that seems insane, right? That seems crazy because these consoles just came out like a year or two ago, right? Like the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series. Like surely those just came out. And then the more you think about it, the more you realize, oh my God, it's been almost 4 years. Console cycles can be 6 to 8 years. They don't have to be super long. And, we're coming up on, and if they are ever, say it's 6 years, say it's a 6-year cycle this time, which wouldn't surprise me, then, they start marketing a year before. And so that's 2025. And that means that there's a chance we get announcements about consoles next year. How do I think this is really going to play out? Well, what I think is going to be really interesting is we're going to have a situation where we're going to see potentially 2 PlayStation and Xbox generations happen almost within the Nintendo Switch's lifetime, which is interesting, especially because the Switch was, even at launch, even when it came out, it was pretty not exciting from a hardware perspective, and then got dated extremely quickly and still is to this day. And it's still doubled up sales of anything else. It's pretty crazy. It does help to be on sale for as long as it has been, but still. For PlayStation, it's assumed that probably early in 2025, they're going to release the PlayStation 5 Pro. So they're going to have a mid-gen refresh, which for most people has given the idea that they're probably looking at an 8-year cycle on the PS5. And considering how little has come out for either of the new, Xbox or PlayStation, when you consider how, especially for PlayStation, their first year or two was very loaded, and then it's been extremely quiet ever since, at least from their first-party studios. It leads you to believe, or at least it leads me to believe, that, the Naughty Dogs, the Santa Monicas, the Insomniacs are developing games for the PS5 currently that will probably come out at the end of their gen in 2026 and 2027 because it looks like 2024 is kind of a wash for them besides Astro and Concord. Even 2025, at least right now, we don't know of anything big coming other than maybe the Wolverine game, but I've even seen conversation about that potentially getting pushed off to 2026. It'll be kind of interesting. We don't really know what Santa Monica's doing. We don't really know what Naughty Dog is doing either. So we'll have to wait and see. For Xbox, you would assume the same cycle as PlayStation, but I wouldn't actually. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we end up in a situation where Xbox tries to do what they did with the 360 and get out at least a year early, if not more. I think that the rumors of a 2026 Xbox new hardware are very real. I've seen Jez Corden recently, completely off his own opinion, talk about how they may start marketing a new console in 26 and then release in 27. I'm expecting the next PlayStation in 28. So even on that timeline, that would still be, there would be a jump. But I think a 26 makes sense, especially because if I were Xbox, I wouldn't want to be in this race anymore when it comes to releasing within the same 12 months as a PlayStation. I think their strength would come from, you know, Game Pass finally having a pretty, legitimate slate of games, plus having the best quote unquote hardware. Obviously, it's only going to be the best until the next thing comes out. But as much as they're already really pushing that idea of like, it's gonna be the biggest leap in console power or whatever, it's all marketing, right? But I think that even now they've been hinting at new hardware, and talking about it this year during that crazy interview podcast thing they did when they were trying to kind of push back on some of the rumors about their multi-platform game. It seemed like they were going to talk about hardware soon. And when it comes to trying to relieve people's fears and stuff about, what's going to happen with the future of their platform, ensuring hardware is a really good way to do that. So, the next gen consoles, it feels weird to talk about it. The first one will almost certainly be the Nintendo whatever next thing is, Switch 2 or whatever. That's, I believe, almost certainly coming in 25. And then it'll probably be a race after that. So it's fun stuff. But so is gaming news. Let's get into it. First, we will have Xbox, and I'm going to kick it off with the Xbox Game Showcase. If you want some of my deeper thoughts on this, I have a YouTube video under Bon Diesel that is just about this showcase where I talked about everything in a lot of detail. But I was going to kind of mention the games I enjoyed, mention when we think they're going to come out, and kind of get into that a little bit. So they kicked off with Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and then they had like an extra show at the end for that. It seemed like it was pretty bog standard. They are adding some cool stuff to this game. This, I believe, is the longest a Call of Duty game has had to develop since 4. So that is hopefully going to show. This is why they paid $70 billion for Activision, is to be able to have Call of Duty under the Xbox label. So good for them. I thought it had a good showing. They showed Indiana Jones, a new trailer. I'm not super interested in this. I'll play it for sure, but Indiana Jones doesn't really do anything for me. But it looked good from what we saw, and I think it will, scratch that itch for a lot of people. Gears E-Day wrapped up the regular show before Call of Duty, which was cool. Everyone was expecting Gears 6, and this isn't that. It's a prequel to the first one. And it's going to be cool. There's been a lot of press already about how, in doing that, one of their goals was to present the Locust as like truly terrifying again. Because in the other games, the more recent ones, they've kind of become just fodder. Like obviously, there's still these menacing, hulking brutes that are still challenging to take down, but in a big way, they've like lost the fear, right? And this one, they're making it pretty clear they want this to be a scary game, basically, because they're gonna have you seen these creatures for the first time through the eyes of a young Marcus, and so on, a young Dom. So, Gears E-Day, pretty exciting. Who knows when that's coming? Doom: The Dark Ages showed the pre-info about this one was that this game's going to be on PlayStation and Xbox day one, and that's since been confirmed. We'll talk more about that during the Phil Spencer interview chat. But this looked really cool. It looked very Quake-ish in my opinion, but maybe that's what they were going for. Maybe that was the idea to a point. But yeah, just you're gonna have a mech. You're gonna ride a dragon, and you're gonna have a chainsaw shield in this game. So, Doom. Dragon Age, the Veilguard got its first trailer during the show. It was not received super well by at least a vocal minority of folks because it had a very kind of light-hearted character intro feel. Since then, they've released a lot more info, which we'll talk about. But overall, I thought the trailer was fine, but some people didn't. Either way, it looks like that game is still coming later in 2024. Soccer 2 got another showing. It looks really, really good. The animations, all that. It seems awesome. And I'm really excited for this Ukrainian studio to get this game out. And, for something to come of this project after they've been kind of trying to dig out from that war and still try to, do the things they were doing before. Fable had a really great trailer, a fun little cinematic one that appeared to show a decent amount of gameplay. They definitely softened, I think, the main character after some of the criticisms from the last showing of this. Not entirely, though. She still looks basically the same. And I had forgotten that the original Fable, you didn't make your own character, that you played as the character. And then they would kind of, change depending on choices you made and things like that. But there's a very real chance that is the player character. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. So they also showed Perfect Dark. That was interesting. A lot of people saying they didn't think that was actual gameplay. I'm fairly certain it was. There was the little things like the ammo counter. If you watch it, wasn't working right. It was going up, I believe, every time she shot, which is weird, but that's probably a bug thing. And this was almost certainly taken from, obviously a very stylized, the edit was very convenient, I'm sure. But it, this looked like gameplay to me and it looked really, really good. I was never a Perfect Dark person, but I'm willing to be now whenever that comes out one day. Expedition 33, one of the multi-plat games that was shown, but will be on Game Pass. This game looks so good. It's a turn-based, kind of late 1800s, early 1900s kind of styled game. And the idea is that there's this force or this being that they occasionally write a number on this tree, and everyone who's that age dies. And the goal of the game is to go stop that being from getting to do that again. And that sounds super cool in my opinion. It was a very, very good trailer, and the gameplay they showed. It's a turn-based game, but it's got a lot of active inputs during the turn-based combat. Just the style of it was very beautiful, and the kind of plot that they revealed sounded really, really good. Same thing for South of Midnight. This is a compulsion game. This is a first-party exclusive. This is a game that's got like the Spider-Verse kind of low frame rate movements in the animations and stuff like that. I think this one's going to be probably one of the next big games for Xbox. It's just got this style, and it looks like it's going to be like fun and interesting and have a cool story. It's just like the vibes around it are good, right? Like if I want to use that phrase, it was just very nice to look at, and the combat looked fun, and the traversal of the world looked really good. The music was insanely good, and it's we don't see that many games with that kind of like Creole, kind of Cajun, that like South, like Southern America influence, and this looks like it's doing it really well. I'm super excited for that game. We had Starfield DLC, Shattered Spaces, get revealed and shown off a little bit. This looks like it's going to be like a very unique take on what we've seen from Starfield so far, which was a game I love. So, obviously I'm at a good starting point with Starfield. But it looks like they're going more into the Fallout feel here with some more kind of mystical stuff, some more sci-fi stuff rather than like the NASA punk kind of aesthetic they've had with the game so far. And I'm here for it. I'm super excited for that. That comes out later this year. State of Decay 3, which this is one of the biggest surprises for me, even though it got leaked early. People knew this was coming. I love State of Decay 1 and 2. 2, I have like almost 300 hours in, I believe. And one of my biggest complaints is that there's a lot of stuff. It could be a much better game. It's definitely like a AA level game. But I always found that like exploration and combat and stuff to be a lot of fun. It's just, the graphics weren't super great. I think that their style is actually pretty good. But but I wanted a little bit more, and it looks like that's what we're getting with this Unreal Engine 5 game that looks insanely pretty. Apparently they've gotten help from the coalition for the graphics side of this game to make it look the best it can, and there was gameplay footage in this game and it looked amazing. And then apparently they've worked with the team from Obsidian for Grounded to work on the multiplayer kind of systems to get like for like the shared world and all of that, which is super, super cool. It's the advantage of these big publishers, is that they can kind of, you know, they have all their studios doing their things, but they can also share knowledge between them. And you see that a lot with Ubisoft, but you're seeing it here with Microsoft, and it's really exciting. So extremely excited for that. The Metal Gear Solid Delta, you know, the 3 remake or Snake Eater remake, got another extended trailer here, and it looks awesome. It looks really, really good. Feels kind of weird to get excited about this without Kojima being involved, but that is what it is. If you can get over that, it looks like it's going to be a cool experience. I never played Snake Eater, even though I've played most of the other games. So this is one I'm very excited for, and we'll definitely play. They showed another piece of Avowed here, a game I'm still not super hyped about, but we know that they've recently switched to Unreal Engine 5, and it seems like that's not really going to affect the release date, which is wild. And so I'm really curious to what like last minute changes Unreal Engine 5 can make kind of to the style of this game and so on. So and then they showed off some new hardware, a 1 terabyte Series S, a digital Series X, and a regular Series X with 2 terabytes of memory inside. The big hubbub about this was that I think the Series S is $350, which is too much. It should be 300 max. That digital Series X is $450, which is a $50 discount from the regular console. That's fine, and I think that's the same as PlayStation 5. And the 2 terabyte Series X with a disc player is like $600. People were kind of scoffing at that, and I agree to a point, until you realize that it's a limited edition. It has a kind of like a special paint scheme on it, which it does look really, really good. But this isn't going to be like a regular thing. This isn't going to be the replacement of the Series X. This is just a limited edition, and so at least that's how they're justifying the cost. So overall, this show was awesome. I was really, really impressed by it. It was the only show I think was like really good this summer so far. You know, Ubisoft's was okay, which we'll talk about. I thought State of Play was not very good. I thought it was kind of boring. You know, when a Lego game and Astro are your headlining games, that's really cool. Those games look like they're going to be amazing. That's not a great spot to be in, but that's just my opinion. And Summer Game Fest it showed a bunch of really cool indie stuff. There were a bunch of great games in there, and it's no insult to those people, but it was a waste of multiple hours of my life. Like, Summer Game Fest was really bad, and that show is only getting worse. There will be time for that conversation again another time, I guess, but yeah, I wasn't very thrilled or impressed by those shows. Xbox Games Showcase was really, really good. I'm a fanboy, so take that for what it is, but I've seen an extremely large amount of people who aren't even Xbox fans just be excited about it because one, a lot of the games are multi-platform they showed, even though they're going to be on Game Pass, and two, it's just fun to see cool new games and see what's coming. So good vibes to the Xbox and that whole crew. After that showcase, Phil Spencer went to IGN and did an interview with Ryan McCaffrey. This interview was awful. Ryan McCaffrey is just not a very good interviewer. And I've seen a lot of people saying the otherwise. My issue, and even though I like Phil Spencer, I think he's a good ambassador for the brand and does a good job with, you know, for the most part when it comes to answering questions and all that. Like there were questions like Ryan asked about like the closures of Tango and Arcane Austin with zero follow-ups, with zero, like he even played it up like, oh, I have to ask the uncomfortable questions. And then like asked, I think Phil gave the best answer he can probably give, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then just no follow-up, just moving on. Like you can't like hype yourself up as like, oh, I'm going to skewer them, everybody. And then, I don't know. I used to really like that podcast over at IGN, the Xbox focused one, Unlocked. There was a time where, the whole crew were people who I thought had different but kind of nuanced, interesting takes. And now you've got Destin Laguirre and Stella on there, and I just can't do it. I can't do it anymore. It's very surface level conversation, and then you have Ryan. Just I think he's an Xbox fan, and he's obviously very knowledgeable, but I don't know. I don't think he does what he does very well, but that's just my opinion. And there's a reason he's working for the big giant corporation, and I'm talking to a couple hundred people on YouTube and on their podcast. So who knows? But some of the topics they got into, the ones I wanted to talk about was he did ask about the closures, and he just kind of gave the bog standard answer, just like, it's something I didn't want to do. I don't like doing that stuff. But it's best for the sustainability of our brand and company moving forward. And a lot of people gave him crap for that, and Sarah Bond for saying something similar shortly after the closures were announced. And what I've come down to is I suspect that that's about what they feel comfortable saying, because if they said more, it would probably seem mean. I talked about this in a video this week about this interview. If you want that more detailed take on this interview, go check out my YouTube and look for it. But I think that they shut down those two studios because those two studios don't make good games. And I don't even like saying that about Tango because of Hi-Fi Rush, which is an incredible game. But it's a game that didn't do very well. Now, is that because it was on Game Pass, because it got shadow dropped? Maybe. Those things are possible, for sure. But even when it went to PlayStation, where we've seen Grounded and Sea of Thieves explode as multiplayer games over there, we saw Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment as well not even make a blip, not do anything. And so it's one of these critical darlings that, everyone thought was like, wow, this game's going to sell 5-10 million copies. And it, I think it may have I don't know if it sold 1 million. And so, look, even acknowledging how great Hi-Fi Rush was, when you look at these two studios, you look at two studios who haven't had at least financially viable hits in a decade. With Tango is the first Evil Within, their first game, did fairly well, sold a few million copies. And then Arcane Austin, their last big hit was when they did Dishonored with the other Arcane studio. It wasn't even their own project. So I don't know. They they can't say that. They can't just come out and say yeah, those studios just aren't very good, so we're getting rid of them. But that's, and then we've heard since then that they are bringing over people. I assume, especially from Arcane, they're retaining as many employees as they can and putting them with other studios. But I just think there's kind of an awkward conversation they just can't have, because that would be cruel. And then not to mention with Tango, them losing Mikami, the guy who founded it, I think one of the original developers of Resident Evil. There's a reason he has a name. Well, he left a while ago, and I think it was right after Hi-Fi came out. And then what does that leave that studio with? I'm sure there's a lot of really talented people there, but I would assume that studio started because Mikami and his name, and after he's gone, it sucks. But I suspect that's what's going on. He also talked about the handheld. Phil Spencer all but confirmed there's a handheld coming, talking about wanting to play locally and stuff like that. I was surprised this wasn't announced, because there was just a bunch of hardware announcements that would have actually coincided pretty well with that from the PC side of things, but not yet. Maybe we get that this winter. And then the multi-platform question came up, partially because of Doom. And what my thought on this has really evolved a lot, where I do believe they need to keep exclusivity of some capacity. But I also kind of don't care where they put any of the games. Because I thought about, say, the Xbot or the Xboy fanboy worst case scenario is that they put all first party games on PlayStation day one. But even if they did that, which I don't think they will, but they could. But even if they did, as long as Game Pass still exists and they still make their own hardware, that should be fine. And the reason is, and I see it all the time, that there's all of these gamer super influencer, like hyper fan types that do all the console war stuff, and they have like decent sized followings, and they have podcasts and they make videos, and they're Xbox or PlayStation or whatever. They all suck, right? But one of the things I've seen a lot from the PlayStation, like super fanboy influencer folks, is every time an Xbox announcement comes out, they're like, "Oh, I can't wait to play this on my PlayStation," and that used to annoy me. But then the more I thought about it, is that if they put their games, if Xbox puts them on PlayStation, you know, you're not going to get Game Pass on PlayStation. So you pay $70 for it. What's happening there is you're subsidizing my Game Pass. And like, as much as they try, like, when I kind of realized that would be the goals, if they did do, you know, put these games everywhere, I would still just be paying $15-20 a month and playing as many of these as I want. And that would be made viable by the people on the other platforms paying full price. And there's a part of me that's really kind of like turned my thoughts a little bit of like, no, I guess, you know, what's bad about that? Now, where that turns is if they don't have Game Pass anymore, if they ditch that experiment, then if you're doing multi-platform, you're going to tank your own brand completely. Or if they stop making hardware, which at least for the next gen, there's no reason to believe they won't make hardware. So I've definitely lightened on that a lot and kind of stopped worrying about it, because who cares? Like, it doesn't hurt me. You know, I'm an Xbox fan, but like, whatever. Like, yeah, again, there's like a handful of games that shouldn't be on the other platforms, but if they are, it's not going to matter. So that'll be an interesting thing to follow. What's most frustrating is, I think, the news cycle of, oh, what's next? There's rumors this game's going to be on that PlayStation. That's gotten pretty frustrating, and I'm kind of done with it because they're almost always wrong, and it really doesn't matter anyways. But I'm curious to see what happens. And then today, I'm recording this on Friday, the 14th, and Tango Gameworks posted a bunch of pictures of like their last little blowout party before they wrap up that studio. Like I said before, it sucks. Like, I will never root for layoffs. I will never try to defend them in a way of like they're trying to say that they're like moral or good or anything. I think it's okay to discuss why they happened and why it may not be insane that they happened or as crazy as some people pretend it is. But regardless, these are a bunch of people who worked really hard at everything they did. And more than anything, I hope they all find something new to do extremely quickly. And I fear how many of these people from all of these layoffs over the last few years are just leaving the industry. And they probably will not come back. So I really hope this industry gets their crap together, because this isn't sustainable. Moving over to PlayStation, AstroBot had some previews and some people got to play it during, you know, all these conferences and stuff like that. So we know that it's got 80 levels. We'll see how long those are. I'm assuming they're fairly short, but this game is expected to be 3 to 4 times larger than the previous games. So you're looking at probably like an 8 to 10 hour experience. I believe they've priced it at $60. And from what people have said, it's just a blast to play. And it seems like it's going to be well worth that. Now, I have seen people doing like, it's better than Mario Galaxy or Odyssey. And it's like, okay, maybe slow your roll just a little bit. like you're saying some things here that you may regret, but no, maybe. I have seen people being like, oh, I bet this is going to be game of the year. It's like, okay, I think that would be strange, but maybe it's going to be that good. If it's in that conversation with those legendary games, then, you know, maybe I'm the one who's wrong. Miyazaki from Software has come out and talked about how he supports the idea of doing a Bloodborne PC version, but that doesn't seem to be indicating that it's happening. So if you aren't a PlayStation fan, this Bloodborne game, I've never played it, but I've heard so many people talk about it and wanting a 60 FPS version or a next gen version on PlayStation 5, or a remake or probably a remaster, or a PC version even, because right now it's, I believe, just stuck on the PS4 version at 30 FPS. And the type of game it is, that's not good. It doesn't feel great, even though it's a really good game. So I'll be curious if that ever changes or happens. But From Software is doing their own thing, man. Them doing another straight up exclusive game seems pretty unlikely, even if it is a remaster. So I'll be curious to what happens with that one day, if ever. And then we found out that Discord is enabling the ability to do calls and more advanced features of the Discord app on PS5. This was kind of a strange thing because Xbox has had a bunch of these features for a long time, despite the fact that I don't know if PlayStation bought a part of Discord or if they just have like an official agreement of like of working together. But for whatever reason, despite this this partnership they have with Discord, the PS5 version of the app is pretty far behind. So kind of strange. Nintendo, no news this week. Nothing that I thought was worth talking about quite yet, but they probably have a show coming sooner than later, maybe later this year. The Ubisoft Forward, not much to talk about because everything in the middle was completely not worth even mentioning, at least in my opinion, except the Roman or whatever Anno game, which I'm super pumped about, but we'll talk more about that when we know more about it. But it opened up with Star Wars Outlaws and multiple big segments of showing off that game, and it just looked so good. Like I'm even more sold on that game than I was before. I was a little hesitant about like gameplay and stuff like that. I thought it looked great the whole time, but seeing and getting more information about how it's actually going to play, I mean, this game's going to be almost certainly a Game of the Year contender for me, and it's getting a lot of really, really good looks from a lot of people, so I'm very excited about that. And then at the end, they showed Assassin's Creed Shadows. This is a game that we had heard from or seen already. This was a pretty good deep dive in it with the combat and things like that. This looks so good. Like, this is one of those ones where I don't know if I'll necessarily go out and buy it day one, but more so, I played Mirage and actually didn't like it that much. It felt like too much of the original formula. This one feels better, or at least it looks better. And I'm really excited to see, everyone wanted the Japanese Assassin's Creed game forever. They're getting it, and it looks like Ubisoft is getting it. Dragon Age The Veilguard got officially announced in the trailer during the Xbox show, and then a few days later on Tuesday, got a 15-minute plus gameplay snippet that we got to see, and then they've just been dumping screenshots and information, culminating on the 14th of June today, with a Q&A on the BioWare Discord that had a bunch of really good info. I'm probably going to do a separate video to get into the details of that, but basically it seems like this game's just going to be really, really great. More than anything, it's just good to see it coming out and getting finished. But the things, I think the biggest thing that struck me of new info is that it's not expected to be a big giant open world game like Inquisition was. Even on this Q&A, people asked about horses, and they basically said that there won't be horses to ride because the game won't need them. So my guess is that we know, I believe it's the Light Tower is going to be our like home base. I assume there's going to be some cities that will be kind of like hub-ish worlds. But I bet we're going to get like a Mass Effect style game that is very focused on specialized areas for missions and activities, maybe some like semi-open world places, but I don't think we're going to be getting one gigantic open world like we did previously, and I'm here for that. I don't want that anymore. So I am very curious. And then they have a lineup of a bunch of, it sounds like through this summer, we're going to get all the marketing for this leading up to the fall of it coming out. The things that they still want to show off are like the character creator, which they sound really proud of, as well as a bunch of other really cool stuff. So BioWare might be back. We'll have to wait and see. We did get confirmation that Summer Game Fest will return in 2025. It needs to be better. The actual Summer Game Fest show needs to be pitched differently, or he needs to talk about it differently, or present it, whatever. But it's bad. It's not good. And then I think what frustrates me the most, and maybe this is petty, but he keeps calling it Summer Game Fest and including like the State of Play from PlayStation and the Xbox Game Showcase and the Ubisoft Forward and a bunch of these other like indie shows that happened, but none of those shows acknowledge him. Like none of those shows had like Summer Game Fest branding. I found one of the shows he mentioned has them as like a supporter, but every other show doesn't mention him at all. And so there's this weird thing where it's like he's like presenting this whole weekend as a thing he's orchestrating when he's not. He's doing his show, and then the state of, or the summer play days or whatever, where you can, which sounds like it's his best thing he's doing, where journalists and stuff like that get to go actually play these games in a semi-private setting. That whole thing sounds like it's way better than the show he's doing. So, I mean, he's going to keep doing shows. He's going to do the Gamescom, which is always bad. He's going to do the Game Awards, which is fine, but I think it's decreased in quality quite a bit. And then Summer Game Fest, I don't think has ever been very good, and I think it's getting worse. So I plead for Jeff Keighley to do less and do it better, or just do it better. I don't know. I'm sure it's not that easy, but we'll have to wait and see. And then for my Division fans, we'll talk about it. So there's some new content coming out for the Division 2. Year 6 Season 1 kicked off, and the manhunts have been replaced with this trial system. And it's bad. I hated it. It was so tedious. I was not a big fan of the way that these trials seem like they're going to play out. I did not have fun with it. Hearing Anna was really cool, the new AI system. But other than that, I found it to be extremely tedious with basically zero payoff when you finished it. So we'll see about that. And then they stirred up a hornet's nest with this idea for this new seasonal model where you'll have like a seasonal character that will go away at the end of the season, and then all of their experience points and gear will transfer over to one of your regular players, one of your regular characters. People are losing their mind about this, even though we don't really know much about it. I think this sounds fine. I don't know how people could be super invested in this game and still playing it like every week all the time, which I'm not. I don't know how those people have been doing that for years, and then this is the thing that breaks the camel's back, because this seems like not that big of a deal. We also don't really know what it is yet. The devs haven't even detailed how it's going to work. So I suggest people chill out and take a chill pill. And that's it. That's it for this show. This is a little bit shorter one. I'm in a bit of a rush to get this one over. But this was a lot of fun. So be on the lookout for on my YouTube for a video about the Dragon Age Veilguard Q&A. I want to talk a bit about that and what I think. Instead of doing a video, I may do my Mass Effect podcast to talk about those things and how I think that may impact the design of the next Mass Effect game. And if I can get a guest on there with me, I will do my best. That podcast is the Mass Effect Hypecast, by the way. And that is where I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And please consider supporting all of my content by watching, listening, sharing, and following on my socials, or throwing a few bucks my way. If you want to know how you can do all of those things, check out the link in the description of the show. That is all I have for this episode of the Baunfire podcast. So until next time.